Hi, I'm Sam Rowlands, studio painter for Transatlantis Games, and today we're painting Hakatlo from onepagerules Saurian range. Let's get started. The colours I'm using today are Battlemud Wash, Dragon's Gold, Gigawatt Blue, Glistening Gold, Green Glaze, Hot Pink, Magi Purple Wash, Neo Pink, Ray Gun Glow, Sanguine Scarlet, Scorched Earth, Skeleton Legion, Sorcerer's Cloak, Vampire Fang, Witching Hour Blue, Yellow Flame, and Surcoat Silver. For this video we'll be using Chronicle Brush's Kalinsky table set. As you can see, they come in a lovely pouch, the velvet pouch on the left, which comes in the tube that you can see, and they also do a leather pouch, which is what I've transferred mine to. We start by creating a solid base coat on both the skin and the scales using Sorcerer's Cloak. Once we have a solid base coat, I use Magi Purple Wash in the recesses and all over the scales. Once the wash was dry, I went back with Sorcerer's Cloak and brought all the scales back up to their base colour. Next, using a mix of 2 parts Sorcerer's Cloak and 1 part Witching Hour Blue, we start painting the large spines on his back. As you can see, as I paint this layer on, I'm leaving some of the Sorcerer's Cloak underneath where the spines meet the body. Next up, we're swapping the ratios around, so we have 1 part Sorcerer's Cloak and 2 parts Witching Hour Blue. And again, leaving some of the previous layer visible, we're painting this onto the large spines on his back. Next up, using Witching Hour Blue, we're creating quite a chunky highlight on the spines and on the top halves of all the scales on his body. And the final part of the scales is using Gigawatt Blue to edge highlight anywhere where we've put Witching Hour Blue. With the tough scales done, it's time to do his chest and the underpart of his tail, and to start this I'm going to use a mix of 1 part Sorcerer's Cloak and 1 part Hot Pink. Next up, using Hot Pink, we're layering onto the scales again, and this time we're making sure we leave some of the previous layer visible. Finally, we're highlighting the scales on his chest using Neo Pink. With the skin and the scales done, it's time to move on to the armour, and to start with I'm using a base coat of Sanguine Scarlet on all the interior parts. Next, we give the trim and the sigils on his shoulder pads a base coat of Dragon's Gold. Once the gold is dry, we use Battlemud Wash, and for this we're placing it all over the red and only into the recesses on the gold. Once the wash is dried, we use Sanguine Scarlet to tidy up and to relayer in the red. Next, using Dragon's Gold, we tidy up the gold areas. Before finally highlighting the gold with Glistening Gold. Moving on to his leather bindings, I mixed up a 1 part Scorched Earth and 1 part Skeleton Legion mix and base coated all the leather areas. Once I'd base coated all the leather areas, I used a wash of Battlemud Wash. Next, using a mix of 2 parts Skeleton Legion and 1 part Scorched Earth, I started layering in on top of the leather, making sure to add little dashes and lines onto it to add texture. This layer can be quite rough. These are leather tassels and they've probably been through quite a few battles. Finally, to add a bit of definition, we use Skeleton Legion on the edges, making sure we follow the edges around as it wraps around his arms. This just adds definition because they overlap each other. Next up, we're going to tackle the rope that's around his shoulder and around his neck. And for this, we're going to start with a base coat of Skeleton Legion. Once the Skeleton Legion was dry, I gave it a glaze of green glaze. Once the glaze was fully dry, I used Dragon's Gold to paint in all the beads on his necklace. And finally, I dropped a little bit of Battlewood wash into all the little recesses where the beads join the rope. The miniature's really starting to come together now, but we still need to add a few last details. So to start with, we're going to do his mouth, and with that I used a base coat which was 1 part hot pink and 1 part sanguine scarlet. I then highlighted his tongue using hot pink. With his inner mouth done, it's time to do the teeth, and we might as well do the claws as well. And to start with, we give them all a base coat of Skeleton Legion. Next, I used Battlewood wash into the areas where the bone joins flesh. To finish, I highlighted the raised areas and the tips of the teeth using Vampire Fang. Moving on to his feathers, they're a good excuse to go a bit nuts with some extra colour, and for this I've used Raygun Glow as the base coat. Once the Raygun Glow was dry, I used Sanguine Scarlet on the edges and the tips of the feathers. Finally, we're going to do his eyes, and they have a careful base coat of Yellow Flame. Once the yellow is fully dry, using a smaller brush with a good tip, I painted in a vertical line of Scorched Earth. With that, the model's complete. All that's left to do is base him, and to do that, I used Scorched Earth as a base coat on the entire base. Then I used some mud texture, and then as you can see, I've just added some tufts. I hope that video inspired you to paint your own Hakatlo, and until next time, take care.